All right, welcome back. Hope you're having a great week. Today we're continuing our review of our fourth BCBA practice exam, where we're going through the next 10 questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe so you get all of our updates. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out behavioranalyststudy.com. Right now, we offer 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and of course, our combo pack. Questions, comments, please let us know. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard, get to our questions. 61. A client goes to school during the day and receives behavior therapy at night. During therapy, an extinction procedure has begun. The client will no longer receive candy for completing their homework in an attempt to fade out edible reinforcers. What should the supervising BCBA do now? Planning for extinction is one of the more complex and difficult things to do because there are a lot of moving pieces with extinction. First, extinction needs to happen as close to 100% of the time as possible, meaning across all environments. If this child is still getting candy in another environment and then not in this environment, extinction is not really taking place. 2, we've got to plan for things like extinction bursts and extinction-induced aggression. So as a BCBA, if you're going to use extinction, it doesn't end there. You need to plan for all the other environments and all the side effects that come along with extinction. So in this case, if this client is getting extinction at behavior therapy, what does the BCBA need to do now? A, start creating a punishment procedure that can be used if the extinction procedure fails. Remember, punishment is our last resort, right? We're going to try reinforcement. We're going to try extinction. Punishment is not just the next thing we do if something doesn't work. So if you're using an extinction procedure, your next move isn't just jumping to punishment. So A is out. B, attempt to meet with school personnel to go over the new extinction plan. Now, why is this important? Well, for all the reasons we just talked about. If we're going to change the plan at home, we need to ensure that the client is no longer receiving candy at school. We want extinction to be consistent across all environments as much as possible. So B looks like something the BCBA might do. C, warn the family that spontaneous recovery could occur during the extinction process. What's wrong with C? And this is why we need to read carefully. Spontaneous recovery is certainly a possibility with extinction. But does spontaneous recovery occur during extinction? No, it occurs after. You've got to read very, very carefully. And then D, monitor data for 2 weeks before taking any other action. 2 weeks is just waiting too long because you're going to be doing extinction and behavior therapy. Meanwhile, at school, the client is getting all kind of candy. So extinction isn't actually occurring. What the supervising BCBA needs to do now is attempt to meet with the school, clarify what they're doing in behavior therapy, and attempt to get the school team on the same page. Remember, the ethical code emphasizes collaboration. 62. Fez has an intense shoulder pain that he deals with every day. Occasionally, when he shakes hands with another person, the shoulder pain goes away. He is now shaking hands with everyone he sees and is not sure why. This is most likely due to what? Tricky question, somewhat. Let's break it down. Fez has this shoulder pain. When he shakes hands with another person, the shoulder pain goes away, right? So we've got some negative reinforcement going on, okay? Because now he's shaking hands with everyone he sees, assumingly because when he does, his shoulder pain is removed. Only he's not sure why. So he's not even aware of why he's doing it. He's not cognizant of the fact that he's being reinforced. And the principle where the learner or the client or the person doesn't have to be aware of the reinforcement or doesn't have to be aware that they're being reinforced, and yet their behavior can still change is called what? Because that's what we're dealing with here. A, automaticity of reinforcement. Yes, that's what we're looking for. Automaticity of reinforcement says the subject, the learner, the client, whoever, does not need to be aware of the reinforcement for reinforcement to be effective. Fez is shaking hands with this person. Each time he does, the shoulder pain goes away. Now he's shaking hands everywhere, and he's not really sure why. He's not even aware that this is the reason he's doing it, but it's still reinforcing his behavior. Be careful with automatic reinforcement and automaticity. They are not the same thing. Automatic reinforcement, remember, is a function, and automatic reinforcement says reinforcement is not delivered by socially mediated means. So this is not automatic because it takes 2 to shake hands. Tangible reinforcement, Fez is not receiving a tangible reinforcer. And behavior contrast. We're not looking at 2 different environments and a change in behavior. We're looking at the automaticity of reinforcement of shaking the hand and not being sure why the reinforcement is even occurring, or if it's even occurring. A procedure where students are allocated 30 minutes of computer time and then given 15 more minutes of computer time that could possibly be removed contingent on behavior would be considered what? When you get a question like this, where there's a lot of information, there might be some numbers. First thing you need to do is breathe, slow down, and make sure you understand the question. We never ever jump right to our answer choices after reading the question once. We have to be sure we understand the question. That's where all the information is. That's what's going to lead you to the right answer. Let's break it down. We have a procedure. Students have 30 minutes of computer time. They're then given 15 more minutes of computer time, but the 15 more minutes could possibly be removed contingent on behavior. So think about what procedure you have where we're removing something contingent on behavior. Well, first off, negative reinforcement, right? Or negative punishment. A stimuli is removed in response as a consequence to behavior. But in this case, we have 30 minutes of computer time, and we're giving them this what? We're giving them this extra bonus time. We have 15 more minutes, and only the 15 minutes could be removed. So they already get 30 minutes of computer time. They have 15 more minutes they can have if it's not removed. So this is actually a response cost, but a special type of response cost. So what type of response cost is this? Is it an extra response cost, interval response cost, bonus response cost, or mediated response cost? And the only answer here you can choose or should choose is bonus response cost, because these other ones don't apply. They're not what it is, right? They don't exist. The bonus response cost is when you execute or implement a response cost procedure by already giving additional, in this case, computer time, with the contingency that that computer time can be taken away. So if you, for instance, had a token economy where your learner has to earn 5 tokens, maybe you start them with 2 bonus tokens that can be removed contingent on the behavior. So if you have a response cost system like this with bonus time, it's going to be a bonus response cost. If the spoken word bicycle is taught to a group of children while presenting a picture of a bicycle, which previously was paired with the written word bicycle, then transitivity would take place if what? Okay, stimulus equivalence gives people trouble, right? Symmetry, transitivity, or reflexivity. What you need to keep in mind is when we talk about transitivity, we're talking about untaught behaviors. They're derived. To be truly transitivity, the A equals C relation has to be untrained to be true transitivity. Okay. So in this case, we're looking for that A equals C. Remember, A equals A equals B equals A, and then A equals B equals C. Therefore, A equals C. So what do we have? Let's break it down, and don't be scared to write this out. Okay. So we have spoken word bicycle is taught to a group of children while presenting a picture of a bicycle. So that's going to be A equals B. Previously, we had a picture of a bicycle, which was previously paired with the written word bicycle. So we have B equals C. How are we going to get to A equals C? A, the spoken word bicycle was used in the presence of a real bicycle. Is real bicycle anywhere in our information? It's not. So that's not A, that's not B, or that's not C, right? Real bicycle is going to be D, E, or F. It's not part of our system here, okay? So don't pick that one. Same with B, the real bicycle evoked the written word bicycle. That would be great, all right? But in the context of the question, that's not what we're looking at. That doesn't involve the information we're given. C, the written word bicycle evoked the spoken word bicycle. So in that case, we would have A, or we would have C equaling A, therefore A equals C. We would have transitivity because now the written word bicycle is evoking spoken word. And then the picture of the bicycle evokes the spoken word bicycle. Well, that's already being taught. And remember, transitivity is not taught, it's derived. And anyway, that's A equals B, not A equals C. Our answer is going to be the written word bicycle evokes the spoken word bicycle. Real bicycle is not part of problem. We're teaching the picture of the bicycle. Only when the written word bicycle evokes the spoken word are we going to have a true A equals C moment. Difficult questions when you're first learning, okay? Write it out. Write out multiple times. A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C. How do I get there? How do I get there? Always ask yourself that with stimulus equivalence. Is that transitivity A equals C derived, and how did we arrive there? 65. A couple of weeks ago, Jamie started sweating as she was trying to open a jar of pickles. Now, whenever she sees a jar of food, she breaks out into a sweat. Breaking out into a sweat at the sight of jars of food, is a what? So first things first, sweat is a response or a reflex. It's going to be a reflex. So it's going to be a respondent behavior. And it's a dead giveaway to what the answer choices indicate, because now we have our unconditioned stimuli, unconditioned reflexes, conditioned stimuli, and conditioned reflexes. So we're trying to determine breaking out in a sweat is what? So every time now she sees that jar of food, she breaks into a sweat. So let's break it down. A couple of weeks ago, Jamie started sweating as she was trying to open the jar of pickles. So the jar of pickles is unconditioned, right? Starting to sweat while trying to open it, okay, is an unconditioned reflex. She's exerting effort. That's an unconditioned reflex, right? So then we have our unconditioned stimulus and our unconditioned reflex. This really tight jar, okay, Jamie's exerting effort. So now she's starting to sweat. That's the unconditioned reflex. So now whenever she sees a jar of food, she breaks out into a sweat. The jar of food has become what? Well, it's become a conditioned stimulus. And so breaking out into a sweat in the presence of a conditioned stimulus has to be a what? Has to be a conditioned reflex. Back-to-back questions where both stimulus equivalence and respondent conditioning, I recommend writing them out in practice. Now, if you get comfortable with them on the exam, you don't necessarily have to write them out. But when you're practicing, it's really going to help you to say, okay, here's my unconditioned stimulus. This is my unconditioned reflex. Now I've conditioned this stimulus, and then the reflex in response to the conditioned stimulus has to be conditioned as well. If you write these things out when you're practicing, you're going to be a lot more effective on the test. All your work needs to be done in practice. Don't rush practice, okay? If it takes you an hour to do 5 questions, that's okay. That means you're taking your time, you're reviewing, you're reflecting on what you got wrong. The worst thing you can do is try to do 50 questions in an hour, right? You're just rushing through questions. It doesn't do you any good. Break each question down and really, really review each answer choice, all the information, and develop a good understanding of why you got it wrong and why you got it right. 66, you're leading a group of learners through different gross motor activities and skills. You say, copy me, and then jump up and down. You say, do this, and then flap your arms. The learners are engaging in what? This is a tricky question. I'd say it's a 4 or 5 difficulty. But if you understand the principles and the fundamentals, it's pretty straightforward, right? So you're leading a group of learners through different gross motor activities and skills. You say, copy me, jump up and down, kids jumping up and down. You say, do this, flap your arms, they flap their arms. What are the learners engaging in? Okay, so we're looking at the learners here. So what are the learners engaging in? Are the learners engaging in shaping? Well, of course not, right? The learners are not reinforcing any approximations of behavior. Shaping is not relevant here. Are the learners engaging in receptive instructions? They are. And why? Well, because the verbal SD is evoking the behavior, right? You're saying copy me, and then they're doing it. You're saying do this, and then you're doing it. It's not imitation. And why? Because imitation is a non-verbal model. If you just lined up in front of the learners and started jumping up and down, and they jumped up and down, okay, then the learners would be imitating. If you started flapping your arms and the learners started flapping their arms, then they're imitating. By saying copy me and do this, it is no longer true imitation. Modeling. The learners are not modeling anything. They are engaging in receptive instructions. They're following your receptive instructions of copy me and do this. Make sure you understand what true imitation and modeling is. Okay, it's on our study guide. You have to understand that imitation, true imitation, is nonverbal, right? It's like our verbal operants. You have to understand what really evokes those things and what really reinforces those things. How we typically use it in practice isn't always correct. And on the exam, you have to use it by the correct technical definition. So learners are engaging in receptive instructions because they're following your instructions of copy me and do this. 67. Which of the following answer choices represents point-to-point correspondence? With verbal operants, remember, we have point-to-point correspondence, we have formal similarity. You have to know what both of those are. Point-to-point correspondence just means let's say the spoken response matches the written response, or the spoken response matches exactly the other spoken response. So both responses or both stimuli are exactly the same. They're point to point. Formal similarity says they take the same form. Written and written, spoken and spoken, read and read. So we're looking for something that's point to point, meaning both stimuli are going to be exactly the same. You see a rabbit and you say rabbit. It's clearly not point to point correspondence. You've got this physical thing and all you did was say rabbit. You write down the phone number that someone texted you. So someone texts you a phone number, 225-111-1111. You write down 225-111-1111. That has point-to-point correspondence. Both of them are identical, okay? There's not formal similarity because they texted and you wrote, so the form isn't the same, but there is point-to-point correspondence because the stimuli, the numbers match exactly. The bartender asks you if you want a drink and you say yes. Obviously, no point-to-point here. There is formal similarity, though. And then a sign says, do not walk, and the student says, walk. Again, not identical. Okay, not identical. Has to be one-to-one, point-to-point correspondence. B, you write down the phone number that someone texted you is point-to-point. 68, radical behaviorism really distinguishes itself from methodological behaviorism by what? What's our primary difference between radical and methodological behaviorism? A, ignoring private events as behavior. Does radical behaviorism ignore private events as behavior? No, of course not. B, acknowledging respondent behavior. It's not how radical behaviorism distinguished itself, right? Respondent behavior, that SR came before. C, acknowledging private events as behavior. Yes, radical behaviorism says we acknowledge thoughts and feelings in private events as behavior. We just can't observe it, measure it. And then D, introducing reinforcement. Radical behaviorism did not introduce reinforcement. Radical behaviorism said we're going to take it a step further and we're going to actually acknowledge that private thoughts, private feelings, private events are actual behaviors. We just have a difficult time observing and measuring them. 69. Behavioral contrast typically occurs as a result of a change in what type of reinforcement schedule. We're looking at behavioral contrast here. And that typically says when a reinforcement schedule in one environment changes and the behavior changes, then in the other environment, you can expect the change in the behavior to go the other way if that reinforcement schedule doesn't change. Behavioral contrast typically occurs as a type of multiple reinforcement schedule. And multiple says that we have two schedules that aren't operating at the same time, which makes sense because behavioral contrast typically occurs in two different environments. So you can't be in the same two environments at once. So typically there's going to be different reinforcement systems based on the environment. Therefore, behavioral contrast typically occurs as a result of a change in one reinforcement system in one environment. Therefore, a multiple reinforcement schedule. Not a tandem and chained, and then not a concurrent. This is kind of a fluency question, but remember, it's practice, right? We're trying to expose ourselves to as many different types of questions, as many different types of thoughts as we can. That's what's going to make us better on the test. And then finally, what is not necessarily true when using discrete trial training? All right, let's finish with an easy one. 185 questions on the exam. Not all of them are going to be overly challenging. What's our rule when we get easy questions? Trust our preparation, trust our gut, pick our best answer, move on. We don't overthink. So discrete trial training, right? We have clear beginnings and ends. We can do a lot of trials quickly, a lot of corrective feedback, a lot of reinforcement, really good at teaching new skills. The problem is it's not very natural. It's hard to generalize. It's very contrived. So what is not necessarily true? A, the instructor is able to provide lots of reinforcement quickly. Well, of course, that's one of the highlights of DTT. You can provide lots of reinforcement rapidly. B, many responses can be observed in a short amount of time. Again, yes, the quickness of it is a main feature and benefit of DTT. C, skills will generalize more easily after discrete trial training. Now, that's not necessarily true. That's the reason we have DTT and naturalistic teaching. It's the reason we train for generalization and program for generalization. Because DTT does not often encourage generalization. It's contrived. It's often done with the same stimuli over and over. It's not often done for generalization. It's done to teach initially. And then D, discrete trial training is great for new skill development. It absolutely is. So what is not necessarily true? It's going to be C. Skills will generalize more easily after discrete trial training. Great. Thank you for watching. Make sure you check out behavioranalyststudy.com for our study materials, 3 practice exam study guide, and the combo pack. Like and subscribe so you get all of our updates. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.